All right, so this is radio, and we're still having a little technical difficulties with Daniel. So while we're waiting for Daniel to come on, because you know what I think this is? I think this is the man trying to block black people from buying homes. This is what I think it is. Okay.
I think I'm in, Gary.
Okay, I can hear you now, because I thought it was the man trying to stop us from getting cribs, brother, because I was like, something ain't right. And look, shout out to Daniel, too, because I didn't tell him it was 7 p.m., so Daniel hit me up at 6 a.m. talking about I'm ready to get on. So that was my fault. Next time I got to put p.m. instead of a.m. So, my brother, thank you for being on the show. If you can, just quickly introduce yourself to the listeners before we just get into this full-blown conversation.
Thank you for having me. My name is Danny Tovar. As Khari said, I am been in housing for about 15 years, helping people get in their homes, first-time buyers. And, hopefully today we can help get some people in their homes.
So listen,
before we get into it, Khari, I gotta give you a shout out on that WWF. I'm gonna see how far you go back, and we're gonna call our man Curtis. How about Bobby the Brain, the Weasel? Remember circling around the ring
all the time. Yeah, listen. Shout out to Ric Flair. Hulk Hogan, even though I heard he don't really like our people, Junkyard Dog and the whole crew. So yes, that and I'm trying to figure out if I could get AI to do one of those things, make Sleever circle around the ring while this match is going on, is going to be crazy. But yeah, brother. So like when we spoke, it's about housing, right? It's about putting roofs over people's heads. It's the realest way to be rich in this country. And so, you had a lot of conversations and stories that you just put stuff into just normal relative work for me. So if you can, tell a story about popping the bottles in the club, because that one is the one that's the one I think the most people, our listeners, who will spend money on a fete and spend money in a car, don't realize they can have 3 or 4 homes. So yeah, give me that example again, brother.
You know what it is? It starts with two things, right? It's awareness, right, and education. And the awareness is, and again, big thank you to you for all that you do for the community, raising awareness, touching on these issues, and reaching out to as many people as possible, through means like, this podcast. I see you in the streets all the time, so big shout out to you, bro, for helping, keep the community our community.
Thank you, man. Don't tell anybody I be in the streets after 8 o'clock, though, because then it might be a problem. But I'll take the streets reference.
And the second part is education. And that story you're talking about, we used to do back in the 90s. There was a lot of, I'm sure you can remember these days, a lot of clubbing, a lot of Jimmy's Bronx Cafe, Latin Quarters, the Copa, and we're in there popping bottles, spending, all kinds of money between the jewelry and the bottles, and, how much you got to pay to skip the line, and the rims that you want to have on the car while you parked in front. And then I started doing mortgages, and I'm realizing, I closed the property in Queens, and these people bought a house with, it was like 11,000 down.
Jesus.
Back, at that time, and I'm sitting here thinking the amount of money that we drop in clubs and cars and jewelry and bottles, how many houses could I have owned, right? I'm fortunate enough, knock on wood, I own one now, but, I wake up sometimes with the cold sweats thinking, how many could I have owned if I just knew how this whole thing worked? But, back then, I had no idea that you could buy a house with $10,000, $11,000, $12,000, and you speak to people and, they'll tell you that, that's out of reach right now. I ain't got money for a house right now. I don't got this. But in the same token, they'll tell you that they're putting $5,000 down on a car.
Jeez, yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's where it's at. That's what we have to let people know, how this really works. And it's not really out of reach to own a home,
And listen, man, shout out to you for like making it a simple conversation, right? Because I do think the reality of it is that we look at stuff and say, dang, we can't afford that. That's too much out of our reach. And then we become renters, and then we turn around and start giving money to somebody else and not realizing real generational wealth is passing these things on. So, again, the reason why we're trying to say we're demystifying it is because we sometimes hide the information from our people when we have brothers like you who just have that level of knowledge, but we got to reach out to them. So like, give me a best case scenario, right? So I make about $70,000 a year. I got two children. I got a baby mama. I got a wife, right? I got a car. But you know what? I've been saving. I got about maybe a good 10, 15,000 saved up. Walk me through how something like that will get me a crib.
All right, so here's how it works. So just to give everybody a rough idea, you could kind of do your own, I don't want to say your own pre-approval. There's a little more that goes into it, but just to get a ballpark, right? So with something like that, the banks are going to allow you to use 45% of your gross monthly income. Right, that's going to be your max housing payment. So let's say you're making around 70,000.
Explain me what gross income is, because I wasn't
right. Listen, once we touch on it, so when your gross monthly income is the amount that you get paid before taxes, right, and then your net monthly income is after taxes. So Fannie Mae rules, dictate that the most you could have for a housing payment is, you can use 45% of your gross monthly income. So if you made, let's say, 70,000 a year, let's use a round number, let's say 72.
Okay.
Right? That would be, you divide that by 12 months, so you make 6,000 a month. So they're going to let you have the maximum that you would be approved for is 45% of 6,000. Right? That would be your max housing payment. So that would be 2,700 a month. So that's our starting point, right? We're going to use that. That's the most we can have for a mortgage payment. Now, that's where we have options, right? We could say, okay, that might equal a 2-bedroom co-op, right? A 2-bedroom co-op would have a monthly payment of somewhere right around there, 2,600, 2,700. Maybe we don't like co-ops. We have to go out to, outside of the boroughs, right? Because we know the prices today super, super, super expensive. Mm-hmm. So we're going to have to travel a little further out. I tell everybody, you got to get in where you fit in and work your way back. So if you have to go 45 minutes, an hour out into Jersey, because that's where you could afford for right now.
That's where Crick's from. That's where Crick had to leave. He left Brooklyn to go to Jersey. So that's why we don't visit.
Listen, me too.
Oh, you too?
Me too. Yeah, me too. 15 years ago, I couldn't do it. I couldn't afford it, so I came right over the bridge. I tried to stay close. I live right over the bridge on the Washington Heights side. So I still get in the city in, 25, 30 minutes. Nowadays, where the prices are, you're going to definitely have to drive a little further than that. But the most important part, and like you touched on before, you have to get it done. You got to have a plan, because at the end of the day, I can't tell you how many people I've spoken to through the years. I've done a lot of events and webinars and housing seminars. And, you'll hear people say like, nah, I don't want to deal with mortgage business, right? I don't want to deal with a mortgage right now. I don't want to deal. And the thing is, most people don't realize if you're paying rent, you're already dealing with a mortgage. It's just not yours.
Preach, brother.
Preach. You're paying somebody else's mortgage off. You're putting somebody else's retirement plan together. I'll tell you a story. So my dad is from Venezuela. My mom's from Trinidad, right? And I grew up in Brooklyn like you. I grew up in a 2-family house in Borough Park. Now, you remember Brooklyn houses. You have that side door in the kitchen, right? You have the staircase that goes downstairs or goes upstairs. We were so tight with the landlady that I used to call her tia, which means aunt in Spanish.
Nice.
Right? They would come down to my house, barely, not even knocking on the doors. I would go through the side door, go upstairs, have dinner with them. We were like family.
Wait. Before you finish this story, let me check with my engineer. Do I have to pay bills? 2 minutes. Okay, so, but we're going to come back to you. You're not leaving us, brother. So if I cut you off, it's only because I got to pay some bills. Airbnb's paying my bills today. So keep going. Oh, yeah, keep going, brother. Keep going with the story.
I'm sorry. So what I was saying with that house, so we were there for 20-something years. Now, at the end, when my parents left, and it was time for them to retire, knock on wood, I'm not saying this in a disparaging way. They had a roof over my head, tuition paid, but they never bought property, right? Mm-hmm. They came here, just put your head down, work. That property today in Borough Park, probably like 1.7, 1.8. And
Damn.
I know that my parents, paid for that, right? 20 something years we were there. I can't be mad at that lady because my parents chose, they didn't know or they chose not to pursue home ownership. But you see the kind of difference that makes in someone's life, and they were Dominican. They were also immigrants.
Right.
But that property is going to change their whole generation line.
So stop right there, right? Because this we're gonna go pay some bills, but there's a question about fear that I need to ask you on the other side of this break, brother. So hold on, let's go to commercial break. Oh wait, you said I could still go on? Listen, you so good. They making me pass through the money today. So go ahead, Dad. Sorry. So you're right. Your family basically paid for this woman's mortgage, so she could have something. But talk to me why you think the mentality is that way. That we're afraid to be able to kind of be our own entrepreneurs, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, part of it is because we're not educated, and I don't mean educated 4-year bachelor degree educated. I mean we just are never taught this stuff, right? Financial literacy, whether it's building credit, how the home ownership game works, myself included. I didn't find out till I actually started doing mortgages is when I realized, like, hold on, wait a minute. That's when I was telling you, I realized how big the mistakes were that I made in life when it came to money and it really boils down to lack of education. Nobody tells us these things, especially coming over as immigrants. You got to get here. You got to provide for your family. So you keep your head down, mind your business, go to work every day, come home and get up and do it all over again.
So you broke down something else for me about that level of saying, okay, I have an $800,000 mortgage, I have a $700,000 mortgage, but you tell me the story that if you put that money in, 3, 4, 500,000 belongs to you. Could you kind of explain that in the context so people understand why they should not gonna say take that risk, but really take that leap of faith to own something that belongs to them?
Yeah, and this is, there's so many reasons, Khari. Let's start with the first one, right? We're being pushed out of our neighborhoods, right? We can all agree neighborhoods are changing. You know how you stop from getting pushed out? You own a piece. They can't push you out if you own a piece.
Right.
That's the first thing. Second is you're building equity. Your house is working for you. I see people all the time that get pre-approvals and they're talking about the backyard and the sun comes through this side and that side of the house. And I don't like the way this wall. Listen, it's nice. At the end of the day, like when it comes to backyards, I see so many people, I don't want to say wasting time because it's your house. You want to get it the way you want it. But for me, what I try to explain to people is, the house is your retirement. You're not buying a house because the bedroom, the pool in the backyard, this is New York City, right? We get 13 Saturdays in the whole summer, then you ain't touching the pool anymore. So that's not a reason to buy a house or not buy a house. You buy a house because while you're at work, and for us, the middle class, you can't, at least I feel, I couldn't save the money that I've made on the equity in my house. If I tried to take a few dollars every week out of my paycheck, I wouldn't match the way the equity builds. Let me give you an example of what I mean. I can give you a lot of examples. I had these people during COVID, we put them in a house in Long Island, right? 2 people from Queens. They paid about maybe $530,000 right during COVID. Soon as everything opened up and the city started moving again, they called me back. Dan, you got to get us back to Queens. There's traffic now that everybody's back on the road. It's taking us 90 minutes to get home from Queens to Long Island. I said, okay, we'll work on it. I called the realtor. Realtor went, put the house up for sale. You believe the house went for $680 2 years later from 520 something?
That's crazy.
How many of us can save that kind of money in 24 months?
And you should see everybody in the studio. We all pissed like we just lost Lotto. Dang.
Exactly. I was in, give you another example. You know where the Barclays Center is, right?
Yep.
I used to do mortgages there way back in the day. I used to do reverse mortgages at this time. And I'm telling you, sometimes there were times where I'd be sitting on the stoop waiting for the appraiser to come and try to kind of, pull him aside. But hey, brother, let me talk to you for a minute. These people really need this refinance to go through, so they could take some money out and make the repairs this house needs. You got some senior citizens in here, blah, 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 blah. I remember like it was yesterday, really talking to these guys like, yeah, man, it'd really be helpful, if you could bring this thing in for 550, 575. What do you think those properties now are 2 blocks from the Barclays Center?
Well, let me see. Let me look at that math. Oh, about triple that joint probably.
Exactly. Now, anybody working that could have saved $1 million, right? Because if you owe 500,000, this is where the equity comes in. What you were asking me about. So those properties are now worth 1.5, 1.7, 1.8. Let's assume you owe 500, which they probably don't because they're still making payments back then. But let's even put it at 500.
Right.
That's $1 million clean, 1.2. 1.3. You can't save that kind of money putting away $200, whether it be a Susu, a Christmas club, the mattress, the Bustelo can in the fridge. The math ain't ever gonna math.
Or listen, or Chauncey Billups and Terry Rozier, right? So no poker games for that joint either. So,
exactly.
Oh, hold on. So the engineers are giving me the wrap up. So there's a couple things I want to do before you leave, Danny, right? You and I had a great conversation. Also big up to iriejam, because what I think that you offered, and if I didn't get it right, then you could correct me, is that myself and iriejam, we're going to start to kind of host some housing conversations in these communities, right? With you as one of our experts coming in, because I think that the reality of it is, to your point, your parents come from this country. Some bought a crib like my parents. Some became renters like your parents. But the reality of it is it was just for the betterment of us. And so what I really want to do is, well, first I'm going to let everybody know. If you log on to Khari Edwards NYC on my Instagram, or my TikTok, send me a DM if there are questions that you want to have for Danny. Also, we will do it through iriejam as well. But what I'm going to say, my brother, beyond telling you thank you and I appreciate meeting you, is that we are going to take you up on your offer. We're going to start to build out some of these conversations because I know you work with a lot of the middle class as is, and I think this is the pay it forward that we need to do from our standpoint, specifically our Caribbean community. So the CEO's on the other side of the glass, so he's like, let's make sure we do it. But I got to kind of wrap up now. Is there anything that you want to say to the people? Is there anything, Venezuelan you want to say? Any soca you want to give us? A little something?
Now, shout out to your DJ, by the way, on the soca side. Now that you brought up the soca, shout out to your DJ for sure. No, listen, everybody, I encourage you, just, again, follow up with Khari. As he just mentioned, we're going to be doing more of these things. It doesn't cost you anything to find out where you stand. And even if you're not ready today or tomorrow, maybe we could help you build a plan, whether it takes 2 years, 3 years, 6 months, 18 months, whatever it is. But the goal is to put a set of keys in your hand, right? And that's the most important part. We got to have a plan to set those keys. To get those keys, 3% down on 500,000. It's a lot of money, $15,000 or $300,000 condo, maybe $9,000, but it's not forever money, right? It's an attainable goal. It's a reachable goal that if we just put a plan together, you can definitely do it.
So listen, what I'm going to ask of you, and if you could check your calendar and get back to me before the week's up, I'd love to have you come on as a part 2 next week. Because there are questions that I have about co-ops, making sure like taxes and certain things. So if you're amenable to, you could text me after. You don't got to agree on air, but I'd love to have you come back for.
Bro, I'm trying to follow your lead, and give back to community. Let's keep our community, our community. Whether you want to say my hood, my neighborhood, my block, our community. Let's just do what we got to do to keep it, to keep it ours.
All right, my brother. Thank you so much. I think you can hang out if you want to, but we talking to Daniel Tovar about, home ownership. He's going to be back next week, but please hit me on Instagram, hit iriejam. If you got some questions, I'll get it directly to him. And he said tentatively that he'll be back next week. So, what we basically could just do is have him come out. Y'all just heard me summons my man Crick Daddy, so don't beat me, Daddy, but I had to... That didn't sound right either. Anyway, pause, but you know what I mean. So we're going to start playing some music. Come on. this is my second episode. Are they killing us? All right.
Yeah.
Daniel, thank you, brother. I'll see you soon.
Brother, thank you for having me. Have a great weekend, everybody.